So with that, I will let George take the floor for his 10
minutes.
10 minutes.
You know, that's
Start the clock.
5 minutes. Someone's messing with me. So welcome everybody. My name's George. I'm president of the CCBA and glad that everybody's here. Raise your hand this morning if you are excited about beekeeping. Cool, awesome. I was a hard time for me because it was snowing where I got up, and I was like, you know, it's like we got to get into it. It doesn't feel like April, does it? April should be different than snow and 35 degrees. Raise your hand if you opened your hive in the last week. I didn't raise my hand. Oh, there's a few people, brave people. You know, it's chilly out there for sure. You know, so the bees are building up, but they weren't expecting to see this. But every April, this happens, right? There's a stretch in April where the weather's cold and rainy, and it will warm up. That's the law of averages. It will warm up, and we'll get into our bees this coming week. So that'll be exciting. It's always good to get into your bees, and thankful for all the new beekeepers in the room. I know there's some very seasoned people, but there's also people that are just starting out on their journey, and I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad you signed up for the beginners program or the apprentice program, and you can come hang out with me and Joe on Wednesday and all the people that are teaching, because the goal is really to have fun and to also make us the best beekeepers we can be. And there's a lot of talent in the room to get there, but it does take an association, just not me standing up here and talking for 10 minutes.
Who's Joe?
Joe Z.
Oh,
you know,
Joe
anyone
Z.
know Joe Z? Joe Z at the apprentice yard with me? Some of you know Joe. Yeah, you know Joe, Joe. Joe's a great guy. Joe runs the apprentice yard. I'm his sidekick now. Joe was an apprentice a couple years ago, and I've kept him on to teach out there. So the first and third Wednesday, if you're in the beginners program or the apprentice program, you've gotten that invite to come hang out with me and Joe, and we basically go through nukes. It's just fun. Yeah, fun. So Joe Z has told me that get your hands off the hives, George. You just sit there and be the entertainment and let me manage the hive. So it's a great experience for people to make. So again, we really are trying to pour our resources into making people learn how to do this. Some of you in the room, you wonder why you're here today, because you're probably not going to learn much new, because you've heard Keith, you've heard Merle, you've heard me. But you know, please teach somebody and welcome somebody. It's a group effort. Enough. Again, I'm George. I'm the president. We have two vice presidents, Donna, who introduced. She runs the meetings. She puts all the meetings together, agenda together, thankfully. And Mark does the tech side. You know, everything on the tech side and the website side is Mark. Carissa is our primary first secretary. I don't see Carissa here today. Russ is our assistant secretary. Russ was president too, and then he got promoted to assistant secretary. I hope to follow in your footsteps, Russ. I want to be assistant treasurer, but I'm sure Howard won't let me do that. Howard's our treasurer. Thankfully, he does a great job controlling my mess. And Chris is usually here, but I don't see Chris today. He's our assistant secretary. He's a great guy. He's traveling somewhere. And then that's our crew. That's our officers. Again, without them, we wouldn't be running. Next slide. See, I'm moving today. Our work is done through committees. You know, for those of you who are new to the club, the committees really do the work. You know, so all the programs that we're offering through the year are basically done by committee. The committees are small. All the committees need help generally. So if you want to sort of get more involved, you know, take a picture of this slide and reach out to those people that you see that are interested. You know, so. Charlie does the queen team again, right? Where's Charlie? Charlie's raising queens, and Paul's doing grants, and Monica's doing entertainment. Raise your hand, Monica. She's back there. She's doing the hive hop and the picnic and the winter party. And Damon's not here. And anyway, there's our. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 committees. So we've trimmed ourselves a little bit through the years. So good work by all these people. Honestly, thank you for those of you who I didn't call out. Next. Okay. So these are exciting times. So what's new in the CCBA and what's coming up new? We have a website redesign on a project that's been brewing for a little bit, and that's hopefully going to launch soon. Those of you who've been on the website know that we need to do this. and we know we need to do this. So we're going to hopefully spend some money to get this done by professionals, so it actually feels navigable when it gets there. Here's the ask, because I always ask something, I'm gonna ask someone to raise their hand or consider raising their hand. We don't have an internal sort of webmaster right now. And no one's raised their hand before because they realize I'm gonna hand them a pile, right? But we really do need somebody to help maintain it going forward, honestly, so we don't have somebody, because we know if we get it professionally done, set up, and then we have to sort of ongoing manage it, it will end up back where it is today because I'll put my hands on it and it will look like it does, like this in a year or two. And that's not and I don't want to waste money, right? I don't want to spend money and then have it turn into crap. So I need somebody to volunteer to sort of potentially take that piece on going forward. So if anyone wants to raise their hand now, so be moved.
Don't all jump in at once.
If you don't, think about it and come up to me at the end of the meeting if you want to consider. Again, it's not going to be a lot of work because they're going to get it in a place that's really good, and I'm hoping they're going to stay on as consulting too. But I do want somebody in house to sort of help with that a little.
I consider doing it, but if they set it up so that it's really complicated, that it's a pain for us to maintain. If they do something like a WordPress, I mean that's pretty straightforward. So.
Yeah, unfortunately. So fortunately or unfortunately, we're locked into this thing called Club Express, which is our member management system, and that's where we do the websites through.
It's
so
the operating platform.
There's a learning curve. Again, if you have any interest, you're not committing, but I want to get somebody involved like at now and not, if we're going to invest in this now, I know I need this person now and not in 6 months from now once we mess it up anyway. So let me know at the end of the meeting. So it's exciting. So there hopefully will be a website redesign coming up. So when you go to the website, it'll be easier to navigate, look prettier. It'll be more useful. Because thank you for those who filled out the survey. We heard people using the website. Good, but we know that your experience is not. That's what we heard. The plant sales coming up April 26th. That's exciting. Paul's here. Paul Hitz and he's been coming there's a bunch of people. There's like 6 or 7 people that come every Thursday, and we grow plants. So we're gonna have our plant sale. So we're gonna get plants from Octoraro Native Nursery, North Creek Nursery, and also my basement. So that combination of plants will be available on April 26th. You will not find a cheaper plant anywhere unless you're growing it yourself. So please take advantage of that. I think we're buying like $3,000 worth of plants again this year for people.
What are the
It's going to be at your house.
So Sheena, yes, detail. I'm not a detail guy for those of you who work with me. I'm just throw shit and it all works out. April 26th is a Saturday with the plant sale. Sheena will have it up on the website. So you'll actually purchase on the website through the storefront. So look for an email from us saying that the plants are up for sale. And then you basically come to my house and pick them up in Glen Mills on Saturday the 26th. If you can't come on Saturday the 26th, I will hold them for a little bit and maybe water them, and then you can pick them up. But don't expect me to care for them that long because I'm not good at that. So, so it's great plants, honestly, and please take advantage of that if you're looking for plants. All of us should be planting, right? April's when we plant, and if you're beekeeping, you should plant. We're starting a new apiary at the Scout Center here. So that's going to be an Eagle Scout project. So the hope is that soon, it's been approved. We're just waiting for, I don't even know if they've broken ground yet, but they should be breaking ground soon. We're going to have 3 hives right outside there, which is going to be cool. So we're going to have partnerships with the Scout Center and doing some education with the Scout Center. We're also going to have partnerships with the VA Medical Center in Coatesville, and we're going to do some partnerships with them using this site here. And we're also going to use this site after our meetings to do some more in-hive education. So that's going to be really exciting. Hopefully by next meeting, if you want to get into hives, you'll bring a suit and we can get into some hives after the meeting. So that's exciting, and that's going to be up soon. Brood frame next Saturday, April 19th. So that was supposed to be this Saturday. I hate to cancel and get another event, but I don't think anybody wanted to be pulling brood. So we have a bunch of rights. So we have a bunch of locations. We have Cheslin, we have Bondsville, we have Sugartown, we have 4 locations that we manage bees at, right? And those bees are used for beginner's course, for the apprentice program, for the queen program, for education, for community and interaction. So we have 4 sites that we manage bees. The good news this year is that we did overwinter at 70% success on our new, which is a lot better than what we did last year. So we do have a lot of hives but we still, those hives are small and we still need to sort of meet the needs of the queen program and the apprentice program. So we still need brood. So I sent an email out asking people to bring frames of brood and bees next Saturday to Cheslin if you have, from noon to 2. Hopefully Jeff Eckel will be there. Otherwise, Jeff said he trusts me to screen for disease. That's awfully kind of him. So what we'll basically do is if you have big hives and you don't want to make more hives and you have a frame or 2 that you can spare out of a hive with bees in it, you bring it to Cheslin and we'll give you $10 a frame. Howard will somehow make money up here and we'll give you $10 a frame so we can strengthen up what our resources are, right? So again, if you can help us out, that's great. If you can't, I understand. You know, that's what we're doing again this year. It definitely does help give those programs a little bit of a boost every year. So that's next Saturday, noon to 2 at Cheslin, and that supports the educational programs, as I said. There is a couple other things coming up. There is the Doug Tallamy women's. You got a slide on that later. Okay, I'm moving on. Let's move on. George's key. Okay, it's April. So how to keep your bees alive basically is it starts with the hive inspection of keeping your bees alive, right? And you've heard me say this time and time again, and I like to repeat myself, and that's why I can't stay in 5 minutes. But there's 4 things when you go into your hive to inspect your hive. 4 things that you have to consider: bees, brood, food, disease. Bees, brood, food, disease. And the management of your hives generally revolve around those 4 things, right? So let's talk about bees. What are bees doing in April? They're expanding, hopefully, right? So you're going to see your population going up in size in April, which is what you want, right? Because the nectar's coming once it stops raining and the population booming. The peak population hits around the end of May if you prevent swarming. So that's, if you don't prevent swarming, the peak population hits a little bit earlier and they leave. But the peak population hits around end of May. So what does your hive need to do when the population's getting bigger? Your hive needs to get bigger. Now, for those new beekeepers who are starting out, start small. You know, if you're getting a package or new, they don't need 3 boxes. They need 1 box, right? They need 1 box until 80% of those frames are covered by bees, then add another box and then add another box, right? So those of us who have been successful over wintering colonies that are now growing, we need to add boxes. For those just getting bees, start small and add boxes when they hit 80%. So generally, right now, most of us are making our colonies bigger. Brood, always assess brood, and the goal is to recognize when you're queenless or not. Most of us should not be queenless right now. Some of us may be queenless in a week. Why are we going to be queenless? Because it swarms, right? Because when the hive swarms, what happens? Basically, the queen leaves, and 50% of the bees leave, and you're left with swarm cells, but no queen. So you're gonna, don't panic. Usually it fixes itself, right? How often does a swarm colony end up requeening itself and being okay? 10%. 80%. 10% survive, but they leave. But 80 to 85% will be okay, right? So if your colony swarms, 85% of the time, it's going to requeen itself, and you'll be okay. 15% of the time, what happens? It doesn't mate. The queen doesn't hatch. The queen goes out, gets eaten by a dragonfly. The queen gets confused on her way back, and she ends up at the wrong hive. So there's a little bit of a risk to when a hive swarms that it may not requeen itself. That's your job as a beekeeper to recognize that and intervene if necessary. How often does that colony that swarms ends up living? 10 or 15% of the time. The colony that leaves has a tough time making it, honestly. You know, even if they end up in your neighbor's house or in your neighbor's roof, it's not an ideal. It's a risk. You know, it's the way they reproduce, but that colony that splits off, that takes off, usually doesn't make it at the end of the day. So what's left often makes it 85% of the time, but what takes off usually doesn't. And it may cause trouble when it takes off, right? It may end up in places that you don't want it. Food. Obviously, bees need food, right? And us as beekeepers, our job is to make sure that we don't cause the colony to run out of food, right? You know, usually bees are pretty good at figuring things out themselves and going out and foraging and finding enough food to live, but we like to harvest honey. We like to make splits. We do things that aren't necessarily what the bees want to do, right? And that's why we beekeep, right? So you always have to recognize, like, are we doing something that's causing this colony to be at risk for not having enough food? Usually this time of year, you don't have to worry that much, except for if it's 40 degrees and raining for a whole week, right? And you decide to make a split last week when the weather was nice, and then you're left with this split that only has so much resources in it, right? But for the most part, there's ample food out in April and May. This is where food is in abundance. But you have to think, always. And then these, I'm a big mite count guy. I say it, I don't do it. Well, no, I don't, that's wrong. I say it, I do it, tell them I need to do it more. For hobbies, backyard beekeepers, know your mite counts. You know, if you don't have a mite washer, get a mite washer. You really should be checking your hive once a month for your mite counts. That's going to be your best way to sort of know whether or not your hive is healthy or not. Especially for new beekeepers, you know, us experienced beekeepers sometimes can take a look at a frame and say, we look good or we don't look good. But get into a good habit when you're starting on checking your mite counts, you know. We'll go into that maybe next month, how to do that, and surely the beginners program, the apprentice program will, but I can't stress enough for knowing your mite counts and treating effectively, right? So next slide. So what am I doing this month? I'm almost done. It's going to be quick. Next slide, next slide.
Yeah, I'm trying.
You're taking my time. You're taking my time.
You get an extra 5 seconds back.
Pause. Center myself. Reset the clock at 0. Thank you. I'm off. And wake up. That's sleeping. That's it. I put him to sleep. April management, must-dos and to consider. You know, must-dos is the hive inspection. It's warm enough. It's not. You have to get into your hives, I think. I mean, you can beekeep and leave bees in a box, let them do what they do naturally. I don't see the point in it, but you know, this is the time of year where you want to go into your hives. New beekeepers want to learn. Every 7 to 14 days is probably where you want to go. If you really want to prevent swarming, if you really want to learn, that's probably the frequency. Maybe even 7 days, then 14 days this time of year until swarm season's over, which is generally the first week of June around here. Brood nest expansion, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I mean, April is all about swarm prevention. That's why we're going to do that. The best way, in theory, is the best way to prevent swarm prevention. The best way to prevent swarms is to give them more space, right? As soon as bees feel tight and sort of confined, they're going to take off. So you're always trying to, what you're trying to do is just give the bees more space in the hive so they are less likely to swarm. And add honey boxes, right? If you want to make honey, add honey boxes. You know, sometimes I call them hopeful boxes and not honey boxes, but this time of year, they're truly honey boxes, right? So this time of year, there is hope that they're going to fill those up and add to them. So you probably, not for new beekeepers, not for people starting. If you start with a package, don't add 3 honey supers on there. It's probably not going to end up very well. But if you're, otherwise, if you have overwintered colonies, add supers, right? Bees create something called a honey dome, right? So if you look at a nest in a tree, you know, it's honey, nectar, pollen, and brood, right? And eventually they're going to organize their nest and they're going to create a dome of honey over the top, you know, of capped honey. And remember, bees and trees live in 35 or 40 liter cavities. So the size of the nest in a tree is only the size of an 8 or 10 frame box. They're perfectly okay in that. And if you put them in a hive and they create that honey dome, they ain't working above it. That's more advanced, not more advanced beekeeping, but you know, if you want to make honey, you're trying to prevent them from making that honey dome at the top of the hive. So you want to be adding the super so that they have plenty of room to put the honey. Because as soon as that dome is in place, they're done. You'll see it. You know, you'll be like, well, it's the end of May and I should be seeing more activity and the bees just aren't working as hard as they should be. And that's because they've created that honey dome and they think they're basically have enough for them. And the foraging goes down. If you take that honey dome and you move that capped honey higher up in the hive and you put supers in between the brood nest and that honey dome, all of a sudden they start flying again and start filling it up. So just be aware if you're trying to make honey and trying to make a lot of more honey, then just be aware of that dome. That's why you want to add boxes to it. And that's why people say, you know, you sometimes under super, over super, right? Where do you put your supers? Do you put your supers at the top of the stack or do you put them, you know, under the top of the stack? And I think that depends on whether or not there's a honey dome or not. If there's a honey dome and you put them on the top of the stack, they ain't going to work them. You know, if there's no honey dome and you get them on early enough, then they'll fill them up. But if they've already created that, then you got to under super. You got to put underneath that honey dome for them to. And you'll be amazed. Bees love to work. That's what bees do. They love to forage. They'll fill whatever cavity you give them, but you've got to make sure they don't think they're done. As soon as they think they're done, they're done. That's a competitive state. So add honey boxes to consider. I was equalizing colonies. You can give to the strong, to the weak. You know, I'd like to try to make sure that they're all kind of similar in size. So there's nothing wrong with moving frames of brood or frames of bees from one hive to another hive. You don't want to move the queen, honestly, right? That's a bad outcome if you put 2 queens in one hive. But you can move bees, you can move brood. There's always got to be some thought, like why is a hive weak, right? Like is a hive weak because it's sick, right? So you don't want to put healthy stuff into a sick hive because it's just going to get sicker. So there's a little bit of thought that goes on, but generally you can share bees and brood between hives and be okay. And that's a good way to sort of stop a hive from swarming. You just take some brood out of it and give it to a weaker hive and put some blank frames in it, and then all of a sudden the bees have stuff to do, and that decreases swarm impulse too. So equalizing is a lot of good to it. Again, if you have 2 hives and you don't have to equalize, what do you do? Bring your brood to the CCBA and we'll help you equalize. Make splits. This is a good time of year. Carol and I were chatting about sort of making splits this time of year. You know, I mean, resources are plentiful. They're going to make good queens this time of year. So if you want to split your colony, if you want to take the queen out, you know, when you make a split, it's basically about sort of making a swarm, right? So a split is, when I think about making a split, I'm basically doing what they would do when they swarm, right? You basically take the queen out, take some brood out, you take some bees out, and you inside the parent hive, you basically leave some eggs and larvae so they can make a new queen. And this is a good time. April and May are good times to do that. So if you want to make increases, this is a good time to split. Now, anytime you split a hive, just like when you swarm a hive, you're going to decrease the honey potential generation of that hive because there's less bees in the hive, right? Less bees equals less honey. So I generally say you have to make a decision whether or not you want that hive to make bees or make honey, right? It's hard to do both. If you split early, you can kind of make them do both, but you got to split early, and there's some risks for splitting early. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for people just having a few hives. I would say, okay, do I want this hive? Do I want this colony to make bees, or do I want them to make honey? If I want them to make honey, I'm going to super and swarm control. That'll make some honey. If I want them to make bees, I'm going to basically pull a split out and make bees, and basically one or the other. Or you can just let it sit there and make it fun and watch pollen come in and out of the hive and just be fun, right? There's no wrong with that outcome either. Drone comb removal. I shouldn't be talking IPM because I'm not an IPM expert, because I learned from a universal treater, and I've been a universal treater, which basically treat 3 times a year for mites, you know, treat in June, treat in August, treat in December, and basically control your mites. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to use less chemicals, then you've got to think about IPM, right? And IPM starts right now, honestly, with drone removal. So the best thing that you can, drone comb trapping, right? So mites like drone comb. So what you end up doing is putting drone comb in your brood chamber. And then once the bees fill it out and cap it, you basically take that drone out. And when you take the comb out, you're also taking mites out. So there's Paul. Paul does a lot of drone. He keeps his mites really low just with drone removal. You got to be dedicated to doing it, right, Paul?
Green plastic frames.
Green plastic frames, or the medium frame that they build some drone comb underneath. Anything that they can do it where you can easily sort of put it in the freezer or take your hive tool, scrape it out, and just get rid of drone. Because hopefully right now your mites are very low, but they do start to increase. And early on, they're going to be in drone comb. So that's why if you do drone trapping or drone comb removal right now, you can keep your mites lower. You know, those people that practice IPM, whether or not it be drones or splits or genetics, all hives have mites in them. But the idea of IPM, in general, you try to keep your mites low so they don't cross the threshold where they need chemical treatment. And if you're going to commit to that, there's nothing wrong to committing to that, but now you have to commit early on in the season. And one of the best things you could do is drone comb removal. So how many people do that? I honestly do that. Raise your hand if you honestly do drone comb removal. Not many, right? So it's a little bit of a pain. It's an extra step. How many people who do it? Raise your hand. Raise your hand high if you do it. Raise your hand high if you do it. Keep your hand high if you think it's worth doing. Yeah, pretty much everybody, right? You know, so people that are doing it for a reason because how many people have done it and stopped doing it? Okay, I'm gonna put you on the why, Charlie. Why did you stop doing it?
Because it was a mess.
Tell me more.
Getting rid of the old larva.
You gotta do something with it.
Need chickens.
You have chickens.
Back in.
Yeah.
Charlie, you just put the whole the whole frame back in. And bees clean it up in a couple of days.
Okay.
And recycle the protein.
But as Charlie, it's, you know, you gotta put it in and then you gotta take apart the hive and then you gotta get it out, right? And then so it's a couple steps, you know? Those of us who are, I wouldn't say lazy beekeeping, but no, I mean, it's a commitment. But I think most people who do it see some benefit. I think I think there's good evidence out there to say that it will decrease. It's not gonna cure your mite problems, but nothing in IPM cures your mite problems except for, you know, like, nothing cures. Dead hive cures your mite problem. That's about it. Next.
I got a quick question.
Yes, I'm done. I'm done, but I'll take questions for a while now.
I got a basic.
I'm on your clock now.
IPM.
IPM,
I
I.
stands for what?
integrated
This is the P.
pest
Management.
management.
I lost it in my notes. Thanks, man.
That's okay. IPM, integrated pest management. Basically, you're trying to use as little chemical as possible on your hives, right? Is the ultimate goal, right? To use as little chemical as possible. Why is that a good thing? Why is using little chemicals good? Because one is you're less likely to develop resistance, right? If you lose less chemicals, you're less likely for these things.
Back on your time.
You're less likely to. No, this is your question. You're less likely. You're less likely.
One of the letters, man.
You're less likely to get chemicals in your honey.